parenting coordinators, and solutions for high conflict parenting. That is our topic for today, part of the series Mediating with or Without Attorneys with Tye Bourdony. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Attorney Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland, but this time from Spain.
And Tye Bourdony, full-time professional mediator, primary trainer in Orlando, Florida.
Awesome. All right, guys, welcome back, everybody. And Natalia, we're all a little secretly jealous and envious of you that you are in the seaside out in Spain. And where exactly is this?
This is in Murcia. This is a conference on international advocacy in practice. A lot of interesting things, but among them also the possibility to bathe in the sea, which was, and bike riding, which was my topic for today.
Awesome. So we're back on the topic familiar to many people, and that is dealing with high conflict co-parents. Okay, we all have the situation as family lawyers, family mediators, where we have two parents who don't see eye to eye. Okay, they're separated or they're divorced, but they have a kid together or kids. And in those situations, they find themselves having really difficult times communicating with one another and making decisions that are of common value for their child. And so some of these relationships people can describe as toxic, others can describe as abusive. It spans a spectrum. And so having done family law for 12 years, I've touched a lot of cases where the parents just really, for lack of a better word, hated each other. Okay. But when there's a child involved, that child oftentimes is the one who suffers because that kid loves both parents. And our job as lawyers and mediators is always to try to find ways to help parents come together, make agreements, and work things out for the betterment of their child. Okay. Yeah. So we're having this talk today, and we're gonna go round robin again to kind of get different perspectives. But Tye, why don't you start it off based on your experience, and then during this conversation, I will want to read for you guys the definition or at least the duties of what a parenting coordinator is, since that is part of the title that we've put on the screen. All right, Tye, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Great intro. And it's just the fact of the matter, right? It's nice when we have parties who can, maybe they're getting a divorce, but for the best interest of the children, they're able to, come to agreement. But that's not always the case. And, I happen to be dealing with, so it's on my mind right now. I happen to be dealing with a pro se case that is, parties without attorneys. And, it has been challenging, to get, because they have just been very combative, and they're very, their communication skills are just kind of non-existent, and they just don't want to talk to each other. And I recently got a message from one of them, saying, we're not talking. You're the only way that we can communicate. So immediately, when you hear something like that as a mediator, your alarm bells, if they haven't already been going off, really start going off, because that's not the role of the mediator, right? I'm not the way that they communicate with each other. And so even though we had come to a complete parenting agreement, shortly thereafter, they just are unable, right, to comply. And we even put things in there with respect to, well, how are you going to communicate? We're going to use an app, right? The Talking Parents app. There's different ones, but it's great for a lot of reasons, because people will typically, all communications will go through the app, and the court can monitor the app if need be. And a lot of times that will serve to kind of put people on their, P's and Q's and keep them on their best behavior. But sometimes even that is just not sufficient. And so then the question becomes, all right, I've got to let them know. And I think it's my duty to let them know, look, I've got to be honest with you. Once we're done with this agreement, I'm not the one who's going to be, you need a parenting coordinator. And so, what I did was I gave them the resource within this. It happens to be a circuit I'm familiar with. It's pretty much my home circuit. I know the parenting coordinator, and it's through the court system. And I said, look, contact this individual. I think the two of you would really benefit, because on an ongoing basis, you're going to have issues. Have a parenting coordinator help the two of you as you move forward. We're at the very least with respect to that issue, right? And there are other issues, but and that's my recommendation often enough, right? When I get to that point, have you considered a parenting coordinator, right? Our job is to give recommendations when appropriate, and clearly, that was the appropriate one here. Whether they take it or not, I don't know, but I hope they will, right? And so it's one of the things that we can. How can we help? By letting them know, look, this is how I think you're going to be able to communicate best. Why don't you contact and get a parenting coordinator to work with you?
And before Mac gives the full definition, I want to also give some more of international perspective for that. Not that the parents listening to us would consider moving somewhere else, but just for you to know that it's not universal in the entire world. Poland has no parental coordinators whatsoever. We use different solutions that I'll be talking about, but the Spanish-speaking world has a lot of solutions like that, and in many countries you can use them. And myself, I just accomplished a course on how to be a parental coordinator in between the Spanish-speaking zone, which is a fascinating job, because whenever you try to make people come to an agreement and do something positive for their children, it's very rewarding when it really happens. And people themselves can see the results. This is the miracle of it. They see it themselves. So. And now, please, Mike, tell us what it really is.
So, parenting coordinators could go by different names across different jurisdictions, right? And in Texas, where I predominantly practice, there's parenting facilitators as well. And I'll get into the nuance of that. But basically, no matter where you are, the same type of work is going to be similar for a parenting coordinator. In Texas, in the Texas Family Code, it reads as this: the duties of a parenting coordinator. The court shall specify the duties of a parenting coordinator in the order appointing the coordinator. And the duties will aid the parties in the following. And there's 10 things: identifying the disputed issues, reducing misunderstandings, clarifying priorities, exploring possibilities for problem solving, developing methods of collaboration in parenting, understanding parenting plans and reaching agreement about parenting issues to be included in a parenting plan, complying with the court's order regarding conservatorship or possession of and access to the child, implementing parenting plans, obtaining training regarding problem solving, conflict management, and parenting skills, and settling disputes regarding parenting issues and reaching a proposed joint resolution or statement of intent regarding those disputes. And so that's basically just a list where a third party can come in and help you to get your act together, right? That's kind of the point. But they're trained, they have the skill set necessary to help folks calm down,
Patience.
go down. Exactly. Yes, and the patience, go down and dialogue and learn how to co-parent. Because I've always said this: just like there's no rule book on how to be a parent, you kind of stumble onto it and you are taught by the community that comes around you to help you raise a child, and you get good at it, and most parents do a decent job. Just like there's no rule book for that, okay? There is not necessarily a rule book for how two parents who are no longer together are supposed to operate. And so a lot of times folks might have one way of dealing with their common child when they're together. But once they're split or they're not together, they don't know what up or down is because they haven't had it modeled for them properly. It's just chaos. And we've seen a lot of that. It's just chaos. And rather than just getting a judge appoint, in the case and making decisions and just saying you do this, we could then get a co-parenting coordinator to come in and help the parties learn these skills. Okay, here's how you co-parent properly. And so just want to share that. And then the last thing is we have a duties of a parenting facilitator in Texas as well. And that basically says, look, it's their duties is everything that was just mentioned as a parenting coordinator, except that the parenting facilitator may also monitor compliance with the court's orders. So very similar. But anyway, if you have problems with your ex or your baby daddy or baby mama or the other parent of your child, there are solutions out there, and a parenting coordinator being involved in your case might be a good solution.
And well worth the price, right? Because along with it, hopefully will come peace of mind, or at the very least be able to move forward and actually timeshare and not, put the child in the middle too much and what have you. But people just need it sometimes. What can you do? They can't agree anymore, and they have to timeshare. They have to still be in contact, and they're going to be grandparents together. So what do? Parenting coordinator could be a very good solution, and that's my recommendation, to them at the very least in that regard. And then there are other things that I also told them you might consider a neutral evaluation. You also might consider a financial analyst, a more collaborative approach, because if not, I think I might have to withdraw if they're not going to be able, because my job is to help them come to agreement. If they can't, you might need attorneys as well, FYI. So some of the challenges that we face when we're, mediating with parties, especially though with proces, with unrepresented parties, mediators have to be a lot more careful with unrepresented parties. Let's be honest.
And now my turn to say what you do when you don't have parental coordinators, parental facilitators. You shouldn't be thinking that your life gets so easy and nice. No. You actually have a family court exactly following you and chasing you. So the first moment when it seems that there is the high conflict in parenting, the court, the judge by themselves acting ex officio can limit parental rights. One of the methods to limit them would be to send both parents on a parenting course. You need to go for 3 months and produce a paper saying that you were actually attending a regular training, saying what you need to do and how you need to deal with the other parent and especially with the kids in the high conflict environment, and how you protect the kid from the results of your own dealings, being a divorce, a split, or whatever the difficulty currently might be. The other solution, which is again the limitation of the parental rights, will be a court-appointed clerk that will be visiting both parents, seeing how they are doing with their parenting. As you can see, this is already very unpleasant. And honestly, I would rather see a facilitator or coordinator coming to mediate in a way between the parent, telling them what to do, showing them certain things, be there on spot and speak to them case by case of what their conflicts are, maybe teach them something, knowing them in person, and not the judge sitting there at the desk, seeing the files and seeing the parties, for example, argue during the court hearing. I need to tell you an anecdote. I was a witness to a divorce proceedings when there were actually 2 medical doctors were divorcing. The lady was a psychiatrist and the guy was of some other specialization. But when the judge noticed how they communicate and how their versions of what they are talking about the kid differ, the judge just out of the blue said, okay, that's enough. Me here, the judge, ex officio, I declare that your parental rights are limited, and you go for the course, and you go for the course, and I'm giving you just 1 month to produce a certificate that you've done this course, and I don't want to see that in this courtroom again. And that was all. And they needed to start cooperating, not, for example, to lose the child, because the ultimate solution that might happen is that both parents will be either deprived of the parental rights or not really deprived, but the kid will be taken away from them to protect the kid from the conflicts of the parents. So really, when you see this vision that far, and when you advise people that ultimately And you need to know that in Poland, it did happen to some celebrities. They were fighting for the kids so much that the kid ended up in foster care rather than with their own. And I mean, that was on the news and everywhere. So you do see how serious it can get. You, out of the love of your kid that you misinterpret, can be deprived of the right to bring up your own child. So really think about all the consequences of whether it is worthwhile being so negative about the other parent, being so difficult with communicating with the other parent, not looking for a compromise.
Yeah. Think about the impact on the children. That's really what the court is trying to mitigate, right?
Exactly. And so, guys, as we start winding things down, let's give some scenarios, right, that typically produce high conflict, cases in our offices. I think one of the more common ones is where the parents are typically young, and one parent has not seen their child, okay, for a while, and one parent has had primary possession of the child, and the parent who has not seen the child, or they were alleged they're being deprived, they're being denied, they're being alienated from their own kid, while the parent who has a child might say something like, well, they're abusive, they're dangerous, they don't know how to change a diaper, and I don't feel safe letting the child go. So that type of scenario happens all the time.
All the time.
Okay. And no matter, I mean, you have these TV shows like 16 and Pregnant on MTV. And no matter how many times people watch that show or watch stuff like it, they think to themselves, that never happened to me. But then we seem to find ourselves in the exact same situation anyway, where we have drama and problems over a child, uh, with an individual who at one point we were saying, I love you, too. And because this is just a pattern that is routine and it goes over and over and over and over again, that's why the legislatures and the lawmakers have come together and said, enough. Why don't we create this thing called parenting coordinators to help people, resolve their disputes? So that's in my estimation, that's one of the most common reasons we have high conflict co-parenting cases. It's that situation where visitation of a child or co-sharing a child is just so problematic. You cannot get the parents to see eye to eye unless you get someone to come down and tone the emotions and help people see things rationally. What do you guys think?
Natalia?
I do believe that it is a process of learning for the parents, and stemming from a high conflict, the natural way of development should be being able to extinguish this conflict, being able to look for certain solutions, understand that sometimes you bend down, and this is where you have a reasonable expectation that someone will bend down to you next time, and so that you will avoid conflict for the future. Because the best way is not to resolve conflicts, is to avoid conflicts, to find ways that you communicate, not to escalate the conflict, but just never to have it again.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you both more, and it's also a case by case. End of the day, money is another one, right? End of the day, though, it's the children who get caught in the middle. It's the for whatever reasons, right? Because you can have the same circumstances, but it's the parents that make the situation. It's the parties that make it individual crazy or individual. Just they cannot communicate. They lose. So I like to say, I think I'm a good mediator, but my skills don't work at home if I get into an argument with my wife because I am not rational anymore. And it's the conflict that makes you just go crazy. And this is one of the toughest times in people's lives. And they're forgetting about the child. They think that they're doing what's in the best interest, but what they're doing is just continuing to escalate this conflict between the two of them. And the one who's suffering is the child, because the child loves both parents, but the parents lose sight of the important thing, and that is they forget we're going to be parents for the rest of our lives. We're going to be grandparents together, but they're stuck in the now, the things that these blinders that they have that they can't see past. And sometimes they need things to help them, right? Like a guardian ad litem as well, right? That could be appointed or by the court, or the parties can agree to, that is, they're the voice of the best interest of the child, right? Whatever these solutions are, there are just times when parties simply, for whatever reason, their communication is non-existent sometimes, and when they do communicate, it's not communication. It's just a series of argument after argument after argument, and they need people to help them. And hopefully they can get better and start working together. But until then, these are some of the solutions. And to Natalia's point, listen, if you don't do it, don't worry. The court can do it for you, and you don't want that, right? Who better than the parties to figure it out? But they can't sometimes. It is what it is. It's horrible, but it happens.
Exactly. Natalia, did you want to say anything else before I close out?
I wanted to say and encourage everybody, use mediation, see what you can do. And if not, train yourself. Don't expect that the other party will do it for you. Just go teach yourself how to deal with conflicts. This is your personal skill. The better you do that, the better you will be at work, with your child's teachers, everywhere you go out to the world.
Yes. So one last, 4 points from me I just wrote down quickly I wanted to remind people of. Number one, sometimes, guys, cases have to go to court, right?
Yes.
There's just nothing you can do, and a judge needs to make the decision, and the parties need to have their opportunity to be heard. Number two, sometimes, even in our own law in Texas, if there's family violence, the victim has a right to object to a parenting coordinator being appointed, because that might not be feasible, especially if the coordinator is going to be suggesting that people get to meet face to face. And family violence is an exception. Okay. And so remember that you might need to protect yourself that way,
Yes.
and make sure that your lawyers and the courts know what's going on. Number three, a mediator can be a facilitator, but a facilitator does not necessarily need to be a mediator. And so they have very much the same skills, but just remember, when you go to a facilitator, or I'm sorry, a coordinator, they're not there to necessarily mediate your case. They're there to help you resolve your disputes, but they don't have it. They don't have the same kind of protections that mediation does. And finally, there's lots of solutions out there. Tye mentioned one of them, an attorney ad litem. And I was just thinking of all the other things. Natalia mentioned another one, a parenting course, right? There's lots of solutions out there to help you, counselor, and just a therapist.
Therapy,
That
yeah.
helps as well. So lots of solutions out there. But anyway, we're running out of time. Mac Pierre signing off. Thank you so
Natalia
much for joining us.
Łowska-Czajka, thank you
Tye
so
Bourdony,
much.
a pleasure. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Till next time.